Hi, welcome to the Always Evolving podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick. Anxiety is something that each and every one of us experience, yet something that so many of us struggle to manage and regulate. Joining us today is Katie Pankonin, a licensed therapist and private practice owner. Katie is here to provide us with some unique coping skills and suggestions for learning to regulate our nervous systems. It's okay that we don't have it all figured out. We're all just taking it a day at a time. This is Always Evolving with Dr. Liz. Katie, welcome to Always Evolving.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here. Before we jump in, tell everyone who you are, what you do, what you specialize in.
Yes. So again, my name is Katie Pankonin. I'm a licensed master social worker here in the state of Arizona, and I am a private practice owner. And I specialize in young adult college age students and specifically creative coping skills when it comes to anxiety.
I love that and much needed because a lot of us, well, all of us struggle with anxiety on some level. That is just, let's normalize
Universal.
that. Yes, absolutely. But some of us more than others. And a lot of us were not taught or role modeled effective or appropriate ways to handle our anxiety. So let's even start with that. How do we know when we're experiencing anxiety? Like, what does anxiety even look like?
Such a beautiful question. And I think it's so true too that it's going to look different for everyone. It's just kind of that general ick. But a way we want to kind of think about it is our nervous system is set up into two protecting parts, basically, to try to stay balanced. So we have our sympathetic nervous system, and that's our fight or flight. That's going to be the one that's always ready to rock, ready to protect you. And then we have our parasympathetic nervous system, which helps to keep our body calm and we love her. But when those two things become imbalanced, so when we have excess of that sympathetic nervous system activity happening, that's when you're going to start feeling that ick. And everybody's trigger is going to be different. It could be because you have an upcoming concert where there's going to be a ton of people, or a first date, or a number of different things. But when we are in more of a hyperactive state with our nervous system, it can show up in so many different ways. So maybe physically you're experiencing headaches. It can be digestive problems, stomach pain, you're shaky, you can feel your heart racing really fast, you get acid reflux. Of course, emotionally and mentally as well, it can be hard to think straight, to see straight. It can just disrupt your entire day. And some people get really, really good at even, disguising that there's all this happening below the surface, which is why I really liked to get to know ways to take care of ourselves that can be creative and applicable to our day-to-day life. As much as I love a good breathing exercise, of course, it's so important. Breathing is imperative. Sometimes those things need to get a little more crafty in order to kind of get into that nervous system and kind of shock it a bit to get us back into balance.
Yes, so true. And what I like to help people be aware of as well is that anxiety can manifest in ways that we're not even aware of. So yes,
Oh,
it's jittery and just maybe the stomach ache, but also it can manifest as anger or irritability, annoyance, crying a lot. So being aware that when I always like to say, like, you don't have an anger issue, you have an anxiety issue, right? And we have to be aware of all the ways it's manifesting.
yes, it's one of my favorite things to point out with clients sometimes if they're like, hey, I experienced anger is a great one. Or sometimes it's even feeling like hyper aware of like, is someone going to text me? Like kind of being on edge. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's anxiety. Or sometimes it's like, I'm so worried I'm going to experience anxiety. What does anxiety feel like? That's anxiety. So
Right.
it's such a broad definition, but I think to be aware of how many different ways it can impact us is so important for, again, just taking care of our mental health.
Yes. And I love that you're saying, well, these breathing exercises are important. They are not the be all when it comes to anxiety. And how many clients just like roll their eyes when they're like, I need help. Please do not tell me to go take a deep breath.
It's immediate, and I'm like, please do not cringe. I'm like, we can learn that. That is so important, but I pinky promise it's not the only spaghetti noodle we're going to throw at the wall here. We're
Right.
going to find something that sticks.
Yes. So jump in with it. What do you got?
Absolutely. So some of my biggest hits, if you will, ones that I find to be really applicable, oftentimes deal with temperature. So when we think about temperature, that usually makes us think of something called dialectical behavioral therapy, where they really emphasize something called the tip skill, and T stands for temperature. And so usually they want you to invest in extremely cold temperatures, because what that does is it can stimulate something called the mammalian dive response, which can be triggered by submerging your face in cold water for 5 to 10 seconds. So your body responds in this way where it believes you're diving underwater. So that parasympathetic, our our friend comes right on in, where it kind of automatically slows your heart rate, brings more oxygen to all the major organs, and can help you feel more at ease. But we also know that when you're in a meeting or something, you can't just be like, excuse me, as I submerge my entire face into this bowl of water. So there's a few
Valid.
ways around it. So one of my favorites, and I didn't have any citrus on me today, but this is a frozen apple. So if you keep a piece of frozen fruit in your freezer, obviously it's exactly that. But for one, it's icy cold. So
Mm.
if you are in a meeting on an airplane, this one's especially popular, of kind of just tossing it out in your hands a little bit, allowing yourself to hit your pulse points, kind of just playing around with it in ways that help bring that temperature down, can stimulate a similar feeling. But what's also going to happen too is, you can poke around in the skin, you can smell it. Heck, if you end up wanting to eat it, you're engaging pretty much, when you think of, sight, touch, taste, we're getting every single grounding sense pretty much going right away with a singular piece of fruit. So it's kind of nonchalant. And it's, again, I think the weirder the better sometimes with coping skills,
Sure.
but that's a big hitter.
Yes. No, that's a good one. And even when you're on the plane, order a cup of ice. I mean, if you don't have the frozen, oh, you got that with you? Well, there you go. Go ahead. I'm not going to steal your thunder. Have at it, my
No,
friend.
no, no. That was exclusively, we are on the same exact page.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love it. And wherever you're at, that's a really easy one at home. And like you're saying, sometimes it's even just holding it, just gripping it for a while and really letting it kind of do its thing. What are your suggestions with the ice? Like, what are some specific things you suggest with it?
Yeah. So some of my favorite ones specifically are to obviously put one in each hand and to hold. And
Yes.
it's going to feel obviously not the most comfy in the whole wide world, but sometimes that's exactly the point, is to draw your brain away a bit from those anxious thoughts and feelings in your body and getting you so spot and locked in on that ice melting.
Yeah.
And similarly, even sometimes just the moisture and the condensation on the side, drawing patterns on the side, just again, allowing that temperature to set in. And it's just ice, but it can be such an underestimated thing when that's the only thing that we have around. If it doesn't bother your teeth too much, obviously sucking on an ice cube, sometimes, just allowing, again, just super cold, going for the taste sense
Yeah.
again, can have
Yep.
that similar impact.
Yeah. And I think those are great ones. I have not used the fruit. I will add that to my list, but definitely I use the ice frequently and it is very helpful.
Yes, and specifically, again, I was sad I didn't have any lemons today, but I usually suggest more of the citrus because, especially if you get a little nauseous and smells are bothering you around, in general, lemons, of course, are more of a neutralizing sense, which can help to reduce kind of that nausea feeling associated with anxiety as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. What else do you got?
I pinky promise this is the last one along cold, but it's actually a little bit different too. And these are my favorite sour candies right now. You can just get it at Trader Joe's, but sour candy. And I keep mine in the freezer, and I do that intentionally. And I usually say the more sour, the better. Because whenever you have had sour candy in your life, what are you thinking of? Like, if you've had a warhead and you put it in your mouth, what are you thinking about?
Trying to get all of the sour stuff off of it. Like you're very focused on making it not so sour.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
likely not thinking about the anxiety for the 15 seconds where you're like, oh my word, this is
Yeah.
the most sour thing I've ever had in my life. Obviously, again, adding the temperature with keeping them in the freezer, not a necessity. So whether it's, Sour Patch Kids, Warheads, there's something called Toxic Waste on Amazon. If you are supremely into the sour things, it can be spicy, pretty much any palate that you're not used to having. Taste is such a strong part of how we exist. And so going for that super sour or spicy palate can also be incredibly grounding. Shocking,
Yeah.
but grounding.
Yes. Yeah. And I am a huge candy advocate. So that would definitely be one to add to my list for sure. And so outside of temperature, let's say somebody is maybe in their car or they are somewhere where they don't have access to a whole lot. What
Yep.
would be a suggestion for that?
So I love to talk about car anxiety because it's one of the most common places that I hear clients,
Yes.
experiencing it. So I like to create something called a car spa for them. So when we think about that, it's having a legitimate plan. When you get into your car, what helps you to feel the most grounded and at ease? One way to go about this is music. It's one of my favorite coping skills of all time and really curated. So similarly, if you've ever been to a concert and you feel that bass when you listen to music, if you've noticed, your heart rate matches the heart rate, the beat of the song.
Right.
And so if your heart is going a million miles an hour in the car, if you pre-curate a 60 beat per minute playlist, and there are tons, I've created
Mm.
one online with my business, and they can be found on YouTube, it's actually a way to, again, kind of get yourself back into that parasympathetic nervous system without even trying. And it's usually songs that, I want you to like and to feel good about. If we want to go the opposite direction, make it a playlist where it's only the songs you've ever loved in your entire life and you want to scream sing them the entire time from destination to destination. Ultimately, using that music as a means to both help you cope, distract, but it's also enough to, of course, keep you grounded in the process of driving as well. And
that is such a good idea. Yeah. Do you have people Google like the songs that have that rhythm or yeah?
Yes, there's a search engine where you can put in all your favorite songs that will tell you exactly how many beats per minute they are. Usually 60 to 65 is what I recommend for going more on the slow side, and no requirements for if you kind of want to go for more of the bangers, ones that you've loved your entire life that you know every word to.
Yes, that's great. And then an additional one that I suggest to people in the car is even using a straw. So we talk about breathing, but do you have that with you as well?
I don't have a straw, but I love where you're going.
Are you sure, yes. Katie? Yes, and that's just even breathing through the straw. So versus just a regular, because what often happens when people use breathing is, unfortunately, they're using it incorrectly. And there does have to be a certain exhalation to release all the hormones and everything that needs to be released to calm us and to send that message to the brain like you're safe, you're okay. So that is one. So if you turn on your music, pull out your straw, you should be good to go.
Yes, that is beautiful. And the last one I usually put in there is a scent of some sort. Like you go to Target, you roam those aisles, you find, a diffusing scent that you only ever want to smell in your car. That is predictable. It's safe. Again, kind of that car spa environment to provide that mindful distraction.
So many good ideas, Katie. Where can people find you? Where can you be found? Website, social media?
Yeah, so I actually post a lot of these different coping skills on TikTok and Instagram, which can be at enkindle_mental health, and can be found, of course, just in my general website as well at enkindlementalhealth.org.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. So much good information. I appreciate you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for thank you so much for having me and for being here. It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, I am happy to be here as well. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on the Always Evolving podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate and review this episode, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and find me on Instagram at Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick. This is Always Evolving with Dr. Liz.